This is Judge Joe Brown, and you're watching We All Be News TV, the
News-free Dixie.
News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
Well, Judge.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I also want to talk to you about Colin Kaepernick, the situation in the NFL when they blackballing him. I mean, they signed Jay Cutler for crying out loud to the Dolphins when they could have got Colin Kaepernick. It just bothers me. They're doing blatant job discrimination. But I'll talk to you about the two topics.
Well, what bothered me is them putting Vic back in, a convicted federal felon, to start playing again. Of all things, dog fights.
Right. So I want to get there. Okay, we talk about that on the record then. Okay, so We All Be is honored to have on once again Judge Joe Brown. In these troubling times, it's good to have a man with sound mind, spitting out his logic and wisdom to the masses. People are thoroughly enjoying Judge Joe Brown on the social internet and beyond. So I want to thank you once again, Judge, for joining our platform to express yourself. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right, young brother. I'm glad to hear you are all in a good mood and ready to go.
All right, excellent. So I want to start off. I just want to talk about what's going on right now. The NFL season is coming up. A lot of things with the Colin Kaepernick controversy. Him not being able to find a job or a place to play, although he had pretty good numbers last year. He took a team to a Super Bowl and almost won a couple of years ago. But he's having a hard time finding jobs. And you got teams that will sign other players over him with subpar numbers and questionable track record of mediocrity. So, Judge, what are your thoughts about the Colin Kaepernick situation in the NFL?
Make it a matter of economics. They seem to be worried about the young brother causing their fans to drop off. So perhaps we as black people can drop off and just boycott it. Anyway, NFL is one of those things that Caesar talked about 2,000 years ago when he was giving instructions on how to control ordinary people. He said, give them bread and circuses. Pane, donne pane et sertercier. In other words, feed them and entertain them. And the ladies get all caught up in some Housewives or another series, and the men get caught up in some kind of ball game. So perhaps we do ourselves a great favor if we just boycotted the NFL until they put him back in somewhere. We are fans too. I think we are as devoted a set of fans as any in the country. So if we boycotted the stuff, maybe they would feel it and say, no, we agree. There are things about this country that do not sit well with certain members of this country, to wit us, in the way we are treated. I mean, it's nothing new. That was something that happened back in the 60s and early 70s. Black folk wouldn't stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody in the stands would sit down. At some college games, when there were predominantly black colleges involved, nobody played the thing. It's just like we're not getting a good break here. That's protest. That's First Amendment. And if NFL is supposed to be an American institution, they ought to encourage people taking advantage of the Constitution to express themselves. I mean, they could be doing what else they could be doing, which is out in the streets burning stuff down. So when somebody doesn't like something, then take heed of it, instead of trying to squash it by blackballing the man. So fans, stop being fans. For a while anyway. I know some brothers spend so much time on football and basketball that they don't know about, care about, or do much of anything else, which is why we've got such a problem in this country right now. We don't pay attention to the primary issues, which have to do with jobs, education, neighborhood and community safety, and prosperity. But anyway, that's just my thought.
But Judge, is it troubling the fact that this young man never got in trouble on off the field? He never had an issue of domestic violence or drug problems or anything. He's been an outstanding citizen, and it's like he's being blackballed for more his personal political beliefs, more so than anything else.
That's it. And I noticed on one of the bobblehead news media outlets, they had Vic talking about Colin Kaepernick needing to cut his hair, etc. It always struck me as the wrong message to send to the country if you were the NFL to rehire a convicted federal felon, convicted essentially of dog fighting and what turned out to be RICO activity. If you read the indictment, which I did, it's a long one. It's not very well written, and whoever wrote it should go back to the 10th grade and take English again. But in any event, there was a lot of interstate, cross-state lines activity. It was widespread gambling that was going on. And that's not something that the NFL should be associated with. But they hired him back, and they've got him up to run his ignorant mouth off talking about Colin Kaepernick.
Well, actually, with the Vic case in particular, do you think he was overcharged, though? Was it a little bit excessive?
No.
Okay.
You should have read the indictment. They gave him a sweetheart deal. They set up surveillance, and they saw vehicles occupied by known members of organized crime drive up and park. They had search warrants. They went in and looked, found massive sums of cash, relocked the car, and then on surveillance video caught Vic and others coming in, opening the same car, removing the massive amounts of cash. They detailed all of the fixed gambling that was going on about which dog was going to lose and which was going to prevail, and this went on for quite some months. So they had a pretty good trail, and I was surprised that they let him plead out as he did.
See, that brings me up to another thing.
They look like they got him dead to rights on some much more serious stuff than got brought to the attention of the public. That is, if you read the indictments. Or the indictment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you, too, because it seems like it's interesting that the NFL, the people that are connected with the NFL, the black folks that are more vocal against Vic, like a Mike Vick, and then you got Ray Lewis. Cause I remember he got in trouble some years ago during the Super Bowl in Atlanta when two black men got killed, and he got out for it, but he's been one of the most vocal critics of Kaepernick, a guy who almost could have went to jail for life, but now he's in the Hall of Fame.
Well, that's what's wrong with our so-called black leadership in the country. Too many of them who are put up as spokesmen have too many skeletons in their closets, so they get trotted out to negate those who are trying to make a viable point and don't have those skeletons.
And what's crazy, which is unfortunate. I really think it's unfortunate because even when Ali was in the trouble he was in, he did have some well-known black athletes come to his aid, like Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Jim Brown, and many others. But now you got people, they are speaking about, what's going on with Colin Kaepernick, but they're few and far between. He could have got, for example, he had a chance to get hired by the Seattle Seahawks, would have probably been a perfect fit for him. But I don't think they were very vocal in trying to get him on, the Seattle Seahawks.
Look. The black athletes you have today are a far different cry than what you had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, they were trying to ram through slightly open doors that a few greats had opened for them. For all of these major sports, you have baseball, Jackie Robinson, you got NFL, you've got Kenny Washington. For NBA, you've got Don Barksdale. Kenny Washington was the first black to play in the NFL. That was with the Rams. Don Barksdale's the first black to play in the NBA, and that was with the Lakers. Jackie Robinson played with the Brooklyn Dodgers, now L.A. Dodgers, now L.A. Rams, now L.A. Lakers. Interestingly enough, there's backstory to that. Magic Johnson, a great NBA player, has the financial control of the Dodgers, the Lakers, and the Rams. So it's interesting that the first three teams to hire black now are to a great extent controlled by somebody black. But in any event, those three brothers all played in the UCLA backfield back in the late 30s. They all made All-American football players. Kenny Washington was the quarterback, Jackie Robinson was the running back, and Don Barksdale was the wide receiver. So you get into, let's take Jackie Robinson. Now, all we know him for is baseball. But when he was a lieutenant, first lieutenant with the 761st Armored Battalion, probably the second most highest decorated U.S. Army unit in our history, he was in the Texas town in a Texas town where the base was located. He had escorted an officer's wife home, taking a taxi, and then decided to take the bus back to the base. They told him to move to the back of the bus. Well, he had his 1911 on his hip, loaded with extra magazines, and when they told him to move to the back, he told them to go to hell. He would not. And there was a Mexican standoff with Jackie Robinson with his .45 in his hand, according to witnesses, saying somebody's going to die tonight besides me.
Wow.
So his commanding officer kept him from being court-martialed, but the Army transferred him to another unit. They had a 2-week-long trial. He got acquitted. He had hurt his ankle playing football and waived that as physical injury that would have disqualified him from service since he was an officer. So they had to let him out. So he went and played for the Negro Leagues for a short time. They got him with the Dodgers, and there you go. But you see, you don't hear about that part of Jackie Robinson's character where he says, hell no, I'm not going to the back of the bus, and he's not being nonviolent. He's got his .45 ready to deal.
Wow.
That kind of thing is what the old athletes used to be. Kenny Washington was like that, so was Don Barksdale.
You know, I
know Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He and I were classmates at UCLA. Anytime we had to make a move on something, Big Lou, as we called him then, was right there with us. So was Mike Warren and Lucius Allen and the rest of the basketball team. They didn't hide out trying, so I can't jeopardize my lucrative professional sports career. They were right there in the mix. Everybody got arrested, got out of jail, got back into the mix again. And when it was time to be counted, they were there to be counted. See, these guys come out right now, and they're so doggone mama's boy types, they just don't get it. And I did not like it that, you know, you trot these Negroes out who have bad rap sheets, so to speak, who are questionable in character, and then you use them to badmouth somebody that's really trying to push for what somebody needs to have the balls to push. So I'm saying we don't need to watch the sports. They are a distraction for what we ought to be paying attention to. So when somebody in these sports decides to take the opportunity to remind us that everything ain't all right, then we need to back them up. We don't need to watch an NFL game for the rest of the year and go read a damn book and learn something or go get active in something. You know, that's what we need to do.
I know, and I think a lot of people will agree with you, Judge, and why they love to hear you, because you speak the truth, your truth, without any filters. And also I want to add with Jackie Robinson, a lot of people don't know that it was Joe Louis, the boxing champion, that got him to officer training program. They wouldn't let him in. Then Joe Louis co-signed for him.
That is what happened. That is not what happened. That's a myth.
That's a myth. I heard in the documentary on PBS, so it's not true.
Well, that's PBS. What the reality was is Jackie Robinson went to UCLA. They had an ROTC program. They had the same one I went through. They had a scholarship available, several, for those who were qualified for it. He got one. He went through UCLA's ROTC program. He was brigade commander, just like I was. And when the war started, he went with the 10th Cavalry, a.k.a. Buffalo Soldiers, and then transferred to the 761st Armored Battalion. As a matter of fact, there's an excellent book written by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is a historian and a writer. And it details Jackie Robinson's coming out of the same school that Kareem came out of, UCLA. Mm-hmm. Also, we had Mayor Tom Bradley of Los Angeles came out of that, Flojo, and, you know, we had a lot of people came out of that place. So, interestingly enough, we used to be known as the place where a black man could get a high-level education, and they always had teams with a lot of black folk on it. Mm-hmm. By the time I got there in 1965, they had 60-some thousand full-time students. They had 72 full-time black undergrads, including us, and 73 full-time black grad students for 145 out of 60-plus thousand. And on the football team, they had 3 black folk. Mm. So that's how far down it had dropped. And there was a point in there in the last 15 years where UCLA only had 1 entering black freshman. And that's a public institution. But you see, when I was there, we all organized and said, hell, you know, we got a lot to lose, but we've got a lot we are obligated to do. So a lot of us put it on the line and risk our future careers. And from 145 blacks in there, including the grad students, in 2 years, we got in 250 undergrads for 1967, and then 250 more for 1968. Everything was good until 68, and then we started getting that craven kind that you get right now that represents so much of so-called black leadership. They're going, I'm sorry, brother. I appreciate all of the sacrifices that you guys have made to get me in here, but I can't afford to jeopardize my career. Go on without me and I'll be there in spirit. Grab that fool. And I remember one idiot now dead who made a whole lot to do that he was involved with BSU, was so scared. One of us on each side holding him. He had on some gray pants and they had a dark stain on the left side and a pool of urine at his feet because he peed on himself. He was so scared.
Wow.
But see, it's a different day.
Everybody's
asking about what to be done. It's called having some balls, some cojones, having some testosterone flowing in your veins and acting like you are a man instead of some kind of sissy running around talking about you have to be too damn nice. Well, I call it the talented 10th. Those educated, intelligent blacks who will bootstrap up the rest of the race by whatever means is necessary. So I'm offended. I'm an old man. Well, not literally, but basically, yeah. And I get people 18, 19, 20, and Judge, what should we do? Why the hell are you asking me? You ought to be scaring the devil out of me with your militancy. But you're not. And I can remember a spate through the last 15 years. I was going to historically black colleges, universities, and speaking, and there wouldn't be but 25% of the student body are male black, and only half of them was straight, you know? And nobody got the cojones to sit up and say, hell no, this is wrong. Well, a few, but like, we need to man up is what one of the problems is, which is why I'm putting out that campaign, first Monday every month. Man up, man time, man power, man thing, man to the forefront. We have to start exercising our leadership, our drive, our acumen needs to be brought to bear on the problem. And we need to be men to make where we live safe places, prosperous places with economic development, some sense of morality and ethics, and move things on. We've let our neighborhoods become matriarchs. The distaff side is running things where we live, not men. Family's gone to hell, and we've let major society put this filth that they put on TV all the time, glorifying this dysfunction. For example, Beyonce's a married woman, but do you see anybody letting you know that? They try to make it like she's a glorious single mother again. The Williams sister is a married woman, but they want to act like she's a single woman. Women, you should be married before you have babies. One time's an accident, I can understand that. Multiple occasions, something's wrong with your compass. Get a man. It might help if you started worrying about what you were doing in terms of, am I going to be a fit mother? Am I worrying about what I need to learn? What if I have a son? Will I be able to get man training for him? Is the man I'm with, if he is a man, somebody just going to give somebody man training? See, we have to have all of these things in mind. Yes, brothers, take care of your children. But beware you don't get trapped into a paternity situation by somebody you don't want to pay any mind to and want to get as far away from other than just having lain with her to satisfy your passions. Watch who you sleep with. Make it a rule never to get caught with some woman that you wouldn't be willing to be seen with at high noon in the middle of Main Street with all your friends looking.
Good advice.
And that's to the brothers, because that's our job. NFL is a thing that men watch. But we need to stop watching it, because there's one young brother that's got a whole lot more balls than most of the people watching him. And not because he's a football player, but by doing something every single viewer can do, acting like a man and taking a stand when it counts. I just heard somebody in the restaurant, man, it's cold with the Kaepernick, man. Yeah, man. But, man, what do you think's going to happen with the game, man? Blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't be saying that. Say, no, what are we going to do, man? Let's go to the park or something, man. Maybe we can hang out, and talk about politics, man. Brother brought up a good point. Instead of debating on which game you want to watch, that you send all this money to Dish TV, Direct TV, Comcast, so you can get all the games. That's a little rant, I suppose, but it is what it is.
Well, I think you got your hand on the pulse, your finger on the pulse of the times right now. Because when I'm hearing you talking, I talked to you before. You always talk about the lack of black leadership, and it's funny to me that so many people will compare the times we're living in to the '60s, and I always got to correct them. I said, number one, in the '60s, you had a booming historic economy that was expanding. It means that if you dropped out of high school, you still get a good paying job at the factory, support a family of four. And then also you had a strong national black leadership class. You had the Kwame Torres, you had SNCC, you had Dr. King. You had so many black activists in and outside the institutions that were making noise. Like Stokely said, every time they had a riot, they brought more money into the hood for programs. So I'm saying, like, where is that national black leadership that you talk about? We have no Stokeleys. We have no Dr. Kings. We have no Malcolms. We have no SNCC. We have nobody right now.
Yeah, and let's put it this way. We also need to make a distinction between so-called black leadership that consist of a group of people that aren't really black leaders. They've just been chosen by the white power structure to become spokesmen for a pacification message to be delivered to us.
Mm-hmm. Are you referring to like Black Lives Matter, for example?
Yes, that. I'm also referring to some of the black hawking bobbleheads you see on TV quite often. They're not our leaders. They don't go out in the neighborhoods. They can't rally anybody. And sometimes some of them put out a good message, but most of the time, most of them are putting out a message of pacification or downing those who make the white structure feel nervous about telling us what's really going on.
Wow. So, I mean, what can we do right now? I know, like, the Black Lives Matter, for example, it reminded me of a speech that Malcolm did back in November of '63 called A Message to the Grassroots up in Detroit. And he talked about how the March on Washington was a farce on Washington, how the white leadership, the white liberal leadership from the Kennedy administration actually selected the leaders, the Negro leadership, the Big Six, Dr. King and all them, to lead the march, but they really were pulling the strings. And he basically laid it down.
That's exactly what I was referring to.
Okay.
Malcolm is a prophet in many ways about our experience.
Mm-hmm.
And what he said needs repeating. It doesn't need to be expanded on because truth is truth whenever it was spoken.
And also he criticized, he was at UC Berkeley on a talk show, which is online as well, and he criticized, he said that the Negro race is the only race of people that need entertainers as leaders. No other race need entertainers as leaders. You don't look at your entertainers as being leaders. But we do.
Yeah. Well, see, white folk have fallen into that trap. Look at St. Ron the Reagan.
Yeah, that's a good example. Okay, you're right.
Look at Tennessee. You got Fred Thompson, the actor.
Right.
Senator, United States Senator. See, in other words, what the deal is with them, they're doing a different thing. You don't need a real live ego to be in charge. You get an actor and you write a script, and the actor can play the script. He can play a gay musician. He can play a gangster. He can play, a college professor and convince you in the dramatic performance that he is what those things are. So if you get an actor to be the politician, you only need to get somebody to write a script. You see, and there is this thing that the white people are pushing to maintain behind the scenes control. They're trying to get chick flick matinee stars to be the out front somebody. We need youth. No, we don't need youth. We need some experience. And the youth needs to pay its dues and start raising enough hell to be worth something. But you see, it's like right now, the Democratic Party ought to be staunchly behind Bernie Sanders. It's only 11 more months before all of this stuff for the 2020 presidential campaign will kick off. And if you want to depose Trump, you need to get behind Sanders. However, the DNC is pushing all of these little backwater idiots, as new as improved, because they're photogenic, or because they appeal to women, or because they appeal to a youth market. And that is absolutely ridiculous.
Wow.
So if you want to get rid of Trump, get Bernie Sanders. The polls show he could win, but they want to get new and improved because it matches some little screwed up ideology. And the big danger is our neighborhoods have become matriarchies, and now they want the whole country to become feminist dominated, which is not a good thing. I have nothing against women being paid the same as anybody else for doing the same work. I have nothing against women becoming professionals involved in STEM or whatever it may be. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But right now, we need effective leadership who's got experience, knows what the devil is going on, what strings to pull, where the skeletons and the graveyards are.
Yes, sir.
There's a certain female black U.S. senator that every time she tries to pull off a number on the colleagues she has to deal with and they shush her, she's always appealing, women, we need to stand firm. Men, my male colleagues shushed me. We must overcome them. No, that's what your job is. You need to be able to handle it yourself. And meanwhile, listening to you, I get the impression, you were in a situation where you got deferred to because somebody protected you because you were cute. Doesn't work like that in the real world. And I'll say this too. I won't mention the name right now, but you know me. You can trust me, I think, if you feel that way. I don't try to mislead you. I don't try to sugarcoat it. But let me give you a word of wisdom. Do not trust a career prosecutor. It's okay to have been a prosecutor, but if you haven't done anything else in life but that, you can't be trusted. So if anybody out there has been a career prosecutor until they got the job next preceding the next one they want, you stay clear of them. And I'll say this, it's got to do with this old proverb, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And too many career prosecutors have been wielding too much power not to have gotten corrupted. And they're in things without concern for the human element, unless perhaps it's expedient for their immediate objective. If it's a career prosecutor, you tell them to go to hell, go do something in the real world for a long time first to cleanse that poison out of your system. I'll say that.
Wow.
And when you look at these criminal court judges in Shelby County, Tennessee, there's one exception, and I'll give you that. That person's name is Jim Beasley. He's white. And for the rest of the other 9 criminal court judges, look at them and you ask, have you ever done any criminal defense work? And have you actually dealt with people and not just done appellate work? See, I was in Division 9. I got replaced by J.C. McLean. The current incumbent doesn't give much of a damn about black lives. So if you want to see who you need to vote for next election and you're in Shelby County, pay attention to these judges. They're the most important offices on the ballot. Not mayor, not congressman, not U.S. senator, not state senator, not state representative, not county commissioner, not city councilman, because they can't put you in jail, they can't let you out. They don't back up a campaign by the local DA's office and the juvenile court to ruin black lives or those of poor whites. And see, speaking of something, on the serious side, the Census Bureau of the United States is indicating that in about 2.5 decades, white people will no longer be the majority race in the country. They will be a minority. And it behooves us to start setting up some alliances right now, since we are no longer the largest minority in the country. Look at the Hispanics in your area. We need to set up some alliances with them. The youth need to stop killing each other on the basis of he's Latino or he's black. Latino and Afro need to be working together. See, in Shelby County, for example, 35+% local population is classified as Latino, but you don't see them, you don't pay attention, but they're there. And we need to set up a coalition So we need to start thinking. And by the way, if you want to think, pay attention to the things you need to think about rather than getting distracted a la Julius Caesar with circuses, a.k.a. NFL football, NBA basketball, college basketball, college football. Pay attention to what the devil's going on. It deals with whether or not you can afford the notes on that TV set, your car note, take care of your kids, maybe spend some time with them trying to get their heads together so they can get the education they need to deal with tomorrow's world, which is going to be based on very intensive industrial technology and computerization. We've got a lot of stuff to do.
But you know what?
We don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, with the Kamala Harris situation, I started to learn more about her after you talked on.
You guessed who I was talking about.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy. It's like it's Obama 2.0. It's Obama 2 or Obama Light. And basically, you know, I read somewhere where her aunt, her mom is from the country of India, and her father is a black man from Jamaica. So this is another deception about her. Like, even though she's an AKA and went to Howard University, she's not really a black person descended from enslaved Africans. We have yet to have somebody in office who really comes from our narrative as black Americans.
And if you're a prosecutor, damn it, then do something about changing this dynamic. Do some positive social engineering.
Right.
Not just I put all these people from South Central LA in the penitentiary.
Yeah, and so
I up there, and I've got good practice out there.
Mm-hmm.
See, and I've got, and see, you walk in and you try to play that little cute role, and you start getting out of hand, and the other side, the defense, starts getting on your behind, and the judges protect you so you can continue to be there. Yeah, I don't appreciate this. Defense is, and start acting, and I'll give you a classic example. You saw the OJ trial, or you can get it so you can look at the stuff. Look at Marcia Clark and Darty.
Mm-hmm.
Darty is an embarrassment as a black man, up there crying and carrying on, so personally involved in that railroad job they were trying to pull on the man. They didn't have the right man for that case on trial. And then his colleague, Marcia Clark, was just an embarrassment. Over-emotional, overwrought, trying to be snippy, rude, and crude. She turned the jury off after the first 10 minutes of the case. But see, that's that kind of thing that some of them get away with. So, forget Kamala Harris. We need to deal with Bernie Sanders so we can get some relief. We need free higher education. When I went to UCLA, we had no tuition. You went to the University of California, any of the many campuses, you had no tuition. You went to the state college, now State University, you had no tuition. You went to a junior college, you had no tuition. We didn't get that until that SOB Ron Reagan got in office in 1968. Then he started racking that cost up until it got outrageous. Because he campaigned on the agenda of getting rid of free higher education. He said too many people use it to try and change the country. That's exactly what the purpose of it is. He was an actor reading a bloody script.
Wow.
With an agenda of keeping everybody else under control.
Judge, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. You got a point you're trying to get me to make, so let me shut up and hear what it is.
No. I just when you said that about Ronald Reagan and how it changed the dynamics of college education and a lot of issues people dealing with student debt, student loan debt. And I had a chance to talk to one of Fred Hampton's friend who is a lawyer, named Jeffrey Haas, a Jewish guy from Atlanta who went to the University of Chicago, ended up starting the People's Law Office because he was inspired by Fred Hampton. He said the reason why he was able to get into this social justice work when he was a young man is because he went to college debt free. He didn't have to worry about student loans paying back. So this is like an obstacle for a lot of people, young people today, that they can't get involved with that work to help to create a black leadership, a national black leadership, because they got to pay off student loan debt.
Yeah, well, see, that's part of the game. I didn't have to pay anything back as an undergrad, but by the time I got to law school, St. Ronald Reagan was doing his nasty, perverted thing, and here we go. I had a long time. It took me a long time to pay off the national debt. I just used to dodge it for a while, not the national debt.
It seems like it, though.
Yeah, I know. But I used to just tell them when they'd call to collect, look, excuse me, I am just spending the reasonable interest compounded semi-annually on 40 acres and one goddamn mule.
Wow.
You know, I wound up settling and paid off a lot less than I owed. But, you know, I stretched that out as long as I could. That was onerous. And it's ridiculous because, you see, when the society sends its kids to school, that's the whole thing behind public school in kindergarten through high school, and it should be through college, is you're investing in your human infrastructure.
Yes.
And it's not an instruction on who, what, when, and where like you get in primary school. It's an instruction on how do you think, not what you think, but how do you go about the cognitive process of thinking something through rationally, logically, reasonably, and analytically. So you can assimilate facts and information and come up with legitimate conclusions. See, that's the kind of thing that people need to go to college for. They don't pay you for what you've learned. They pay you for how you think. You know, think outside box. That's what they do. Okay, let's see, what else have we got on the, you gave me something of an agenda before we got started.
Oh yeah, like the Hickerson trial and outcome. The brother who was an ex-Navy sailor who he had an online relationship with a transgender woman named Dee Wiggum. They met for the first time last July 23rd, 2016 at a hotel in Biloxi. He found out that she was actually, or used to be a he or whatever. And he ended up, I guess, losing his mind and stabbing this person 119 times. He just recently found guilty. He pleaded guilty. He wasn't found guilty. He pleaded guilty. He was facing the death penalty. And now he's serving 40 years in prison. He's just 21 years old, wanted to be a weather forecaster. But he felt like he was full, and he lost his mind. I mean, temporary insanity, I guess. But I just want to get your thoughts about that case, because I thought it was interesting because, the guy did not reveal to that guy that he used to be a man or whatever you want to call it, because it's difficult now. But what's your thoughts about that case, Judge?
Well, let me say this. It was a homicide.
Okay.
Now, first-degree murder basically is when something is coolly, rationally, and logically figured out, a means of concealing it, escape, etc., or developed basically like a contract killing.
Mm-hmm.
They also have that coming out when it's a murder and the perpetration of a felony. In other words, somebody goes in to commit a holdup and the shop owner shoots back at the holdup artist, misses, and kills a bystander. Well, the shop manager is not held for the homicide. It's supposed to be the robber who put it all in motion. But now second-degree murder has an interesting classical definition. It's almost the same as voluntary manslaughter. That is, it's a homicide committed in the heat of passion, induced by, I don't want to use the technical terms, but induced by provocation sufficient to cause the defendant to act in an irrational fashion. Manslaughter is a homicide committed in the heat of passion produced by provocation sufficient to cause an ordinary and reasonable person to act irrationally. Now, in California schools, they're actually starting in the 3rd grade. They have an animated thing they show the kids. I've seen it. It says, my big brother likes to dress up like a girl. He likes to go out to parties and dance. He likes to go to clubs and dance. He has fun. He likes to fool other boys into thinking he's a girl. This is okay. No, that will get you killed.
Mm-hmm.
You see, a lot of what's going on now and has gone on for the last 40 or so years is the product of our wish human nature were like this, but having not much to do with human nature. And we're animals, and we have to breed, and we have to court, and we have to mate, and we have to rear progeny, kids. So there's a human courtship ritual that has arisen just like it has for wolves, bears, lions, you name it. Chimpanzees, gorillas, you name it. And the females are alluring to the males are attracted to the females because they show power. And the female is convinced that being with the male in question is more likely to be to her benefit than not. And that male will help her raise the offspring. Okay. It's developed so that you are a man and you walking down the street, you're a young man, and you see something out of the corner of your eye that looks interesting, and it's got hips and it's swing, and you look over because that's Mother Nature talking about sexual attraction. Girls look up and the guy looks like he's got power, he's buff, that's the first thing that attracts them. Oh, wow. He looks like he's a strong guy. Maybe later on they get into your mind, or maybe later on you get into her mind, but it's like buying a new car. You know, you don't want a bad-looking car. Oh, that's a nice-looking car. And then you want to see what kind of internals it has, what kind of motor, accessories, and how well it runs and does what you need it to do. That's kind of like initial attraction. Have you ever been motion sick, seasick?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your eyes are telling you something other than what your inner ear is telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of what this whole thing is about when it comes to this guy murdering this transvestite. His eyes and his senses were telling him this is a reasonably desirable female. And then it comes out that it's not a female at all. And that sort of gives your inner equilibrium a shock. The next thing, and I've actually handled homicides like this myself as a defense lawyer, the dynamic is that you think you're a straight guy. So a homosexual starts trying to hit on you. And the immediate offense is, why in the world is this homosexual thinking I would go for that? That's insulting. And that can produce some violent reactions that are just out of that person's control. They go off and react without realizing what they're doing. Temporary insanity, if you would. What is worse for this dynamic is to find the straight guy finding it's by ambush. it's a homosexual who wanted to be with him, why would the homosexual pick him as being susceptible to reciprocating the homosexuality? And then the homosexual ambushed him because it's dressed up like a woman. See, there are a lot of assaults and homicides committed because of that. A lot of them don't go very far because the transvestite just got some teeth knocked out because he was trying to make moves on somebody in a bar, and that person didn't realize what it was until it came out, and then he took off, and there wasn't enough connection for somebody to find who did it. But you see, you start messing with fundamental human and nature in there, and you're going to provoke a response. Now, what you do behind closed doors is your business. Nobody has a right to tell you what you do, as long as you don't hurt anybody. But you set somebody off so they react without thinking about it, you've got a problem. And too much of what's going on now is we don't like the paradigm that is humanity. We want to shift it someplace else, but, you know, people haven't changed fundamentally in 40, 45 years. They're the same creature. So you act at your peril. And, you know, there is a possibility there's another way of looking at that. You know, in places like California and New York, you've got all this hate language and stuff where if you call a homosexual the wrong thing, you can be prosecuted for it. Or if you take certain actions toward a homosexual that are okay toward somebody else, you can be prosecuted for it. Well, how about the reciprocal? If you're a homosexual and you sit up there and you insult a heterosexual and you do the same thing in reverse, shouldn't that be a crime? Or, you know, women get all upset when men want to make certain moves on them and say you shouldn't do that. Well, shouldn't that be a crime too if somebody who is transvestite decides to make a move on a guy without full advisement? So it's hypocritical if you don't take back what you want given out. See, there are all kinds of things in here that it's like you try to change things beyond First Amendment freedom of speech, you have problems.
Now, Judge, have you remember a time, like I'm thinking to myself now, since all these cases coming out, or these situations, do you think it's normal now? Is it the new normal to ask a person, were you always a man or were you always a woman? If you are considering about dating them or even more? Is that the new normal?
You know what? That's how ridiculous it's gotten. I mean, the thing of it is, just think about it. You can't talk to a man, you can't talk to a woman at work. That's sexual harassment. You run into somebody at a bar, you're liable to have to ask that question, excuse me, are you a man or are you, what's that, something on TV they cancel a show on, with them Kardashians, you know. Okay, are you a Caitlyn? Are you a woman? Have you always been one? You know? See, it's gotten ridiculous. And then you see, here's the other thing, too. Only a very small percentage of your population does that. So what's going on is you want to undo human nature for the benefit of that very small percentage. Intellectually, okay, fine. But when you start getting these deep down inside visceral reactions to this kind of stuff, you shouldn't be surprised. And somewhere along here, you know, we've got this too. They have their rights. We have our rights. And in the middle, there is what you call the First Amendment that allows free speech. We cannot castigate a full and open discussion of these issues because they just fail. The news media does not want that free and open discussion because, like they themselves report, 85 to 90% of all people involved in the media are LGBTQ.
I say the number again, Judge. What's the percentage?
85 to 90% of everybody involved in the Hollywood or New York industries associated with the media and entertainment happen to be gay.
Wow.
They have an agenda. Just imagine what might be the case if black folk had taken over Hollywood back in 1969 or 70, and you had some that were devoted to the cause who used the opportunity from 1970 to now to propagandize the country into accepting us. They have their absolute right to do what they want, but on the other hand, straight people have rights too. And the difference between the straight people and what their situation is without straight people, you don't have another generation of humans. You put two gays on an island, you get nothing. Put two heterosexual man and a woman on an island, you keep going.
So is this a form of eugenics? Is this agenda a form of eugenics? Population control?
I'll tell you something. This part, I think it may be a built-in population control device.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say that based on the following. When I was in college, one of the things I did to help pay my way, just taking care of rent, stuff like that, was I would go over and work in the biology department, and I'd clean out the rat warrens. They had populations of rats. And one of their experimental protocols that struck me as fascinating at the time was creating stress by increasing the population density of the various rat warrens. They had already done a workup to determine which rats were dominant and which were most submissive. So when they started crowding the populations, the most submissive ones started becoming homosexual. And the more crowded they got, the more widespread that homosexual trend in the rats became. But it worked up almost on a 1-1 correlation between least dominant first, next dominant second, third, so on, and the dominant rats stayed heterosexual. So the non-dominant ones didn't breed. I'm not surprised at that happening right now. And see, we have, like, for example, Black Lives Matter has essentially been co-opted by LGBTQ.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the formal foundation of Black Lives Matter is the work of LGBTQ persons. And the way that works is like the NAACP. The first three people that founded the NAACP, there was one Jewish woman, one one Jewish man, and W.E.B. Du Bois. He bailed on him. He started saying it was counterproductive. But the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People had a point. And it was that if you couldn't do it to a Negro, you couldn't do it to a Jew. And on that theme, it was extended back the other way. For the first half of the 20th century, most of the civil rights gains for blacks came from the SPCA laws. In other words, Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animal laws. The theory was is if you couldn't do it to a dog, you couldn't do it to a Negro. If you couldn't do it to a Negro, you couldn't do it to a Jew. So we got put in the position for certain elements of the society of being trial balloons. In other words, let's see how it works with the Negro, or work the point out with the Negro, and then apply it to other people. So you see the Negro homosexual being pushed today as a trial balloon to the white ones. You see the Negro lesbian being pushed today is the trial balloon to the white ones.
Uh-huh.
Some people call it the Negropean population. Those blacks who have put in their heads a certain identification with the white culture such that they become not Europeans but Negropeans. And that's based on, interestingly enough, a twofold thing. White hyper-feminists, and by this I don't mean feminine women, I mean the women who down manhood. That feminist with a capital F and the LGBTQ crowd look at men as an enemy. They think being married is enslavement. They even phrase it that way. But they villainize most of all straight black men, because straight black men, heterosexual black men, can be dangerous to the status quo. So to down straight black men, they try to push us to the bottom and use our women for that purpose. They've always done that. And they try to encourage the inner city becoming a matriarchy where there are not paramount masculine values being taught to the boys. And such males as are trapped in that situation tend to be those who go along with thinking like women. You live off of the opposite sex. You're dominated by the opposite sex. You, like white members of the opposite sex, didn't pursue your education, didn't get training, and you look for somebody or something to take care of you. There's no economy sometimes other than what's donated by the state through public assistance as a subsidy to keep certain people out of the workplace, so whites who want to work don't get too much competition for the jobs that are available. That is usually distributed to females, so that promotes a feminine head of any kind of household. The women get the money because women with children get a check, even if they've never worked, even if their mothers never worked, even if the grandmothers and great-grandmothers never worked. All they have to do is procreate, they get a check. So all of the males that they procreate, that they don't teach to drive the discipline and the outlook to, that causes them to go become prepared to make it in the world, they can get taken care of by women who take some of the check they get and give it to these boy toy types that they have at home. So it is an insidious thing that downs masculinity. So our hope of getting someplace is restoration of the masculine principle. Now, there are probably a lot of feminists who hate me for saying that. They want to go all off, and they can just take their stupid nonsense and go crawl under a rock for all I'm concerned, because they suffer for lack of the masculine principle too. I challenge them go down into the hood in the city where they live and walk around unescorted and see what happens after a few days. They may have their rights. They may want to do whatever they want to do, but go try and do it and see if you survive. That's what the masculine principle is about, to make sure that there's a survival of the women so they aren't just snatched. See, there's a whole lot of rape in the inner city. And it just happens. And then we get into this other thing, see, where there's a lack of common sense. You know, it's legal to have money in your pocket. You know that, I know that, right?
Yes, sir.
You got $400 or $500 in cash in your pockets. You're down in the hood. Are you gonna pull out your roll and flash it?
Oh, no. No, sir.
What's gonna happen to you?
No, you get robbed. More likely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you know this thing about women saying they have a right to dress however they want to dress?
Yes, sir.
You got a right to have money in your pocket, right?
Mm-hmm.
You flash it, what's gonna happen? Some crook's gonna hijack you.
Right.
They've got the goodies and they want to flash it by being bare. What's going to happen? It's going to get hijacked. They had a right to flash it. You have a right to flash your cash, but it's not the wise thing to do under circumstances. That's why you have the criminal law. It's against the law to rape and rob, but it's done. You see, those are realities that people don't want to admit exist.
So basically what you're saying, what I like, is that people got this thing about black on black crime, but crime is crime.
Exactly.
Crime has no color, but people want to push that, and which is unfortunate. Like, we're just prone to criminality when in actuality, when the opportunity presents itself, a criminal will act. You know, it's like, I know that I read somewhere where crimes go down when it rains real hard outside. When the weather's bad, crime goes down. The snowstorm, raining outside, the crime goes down.
Yeah, people aren't hanging on the corner waiting to look for an opportunity. They're indoors to get out of the weather.
That's right. That's right. So it's not a race thing. I mean, I'm just tired when people, when I hear black folks who want to make a statement about crime and the social economic conditions, once they bring up black on black crime, I kind of tune out.
Well, look, the Irish had a whole lot of Irish on Irish crime.
Exactly.
In New York, the
Italians
had a whole lot of Italian on Italian crime.
Jewish people.
The Mexicans have a whole lot of Mexican on Mexican crime.
Exactly.
Put the Jews in a ghetto, and they've got a lot of Jew on Jew crime.
Right.
I mean, it's when you keep a people down and it becomes a crucial thought of where do I get fed tomorrow, or how do I get fed, or where do I sleep. People start getting desperate, and it's a matter of, he's got it, I can take it, I'm going to take it.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Until somebody gets the idea of, hey, we ought to unify, and let's see what we can do collectively. The Irish decided to run the police department in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
They got somewhere when that led into politics, and the Italians, you know, they did the mafia thing, and those guys got to be bad news, so the mafia decided to control politics, and that helped out the Italian population, you know, so it works.
But you got to have organizations, not protesters. Even Jimmy Hoffa organized labor. Everything that you want to get results in this system, you got to be organized about it, not protesting. Not necessarily just complaining, but organized with an objective.
A secret.
Mm-hmm.
If you let the horse out of the barn, you can put it back in. If the horse kicks the side of the barn down and gets out, you have to build the barn first.
Right.
If they hand it to you and give it to you, they can take it back. You have to make it so that on the balance of harm that can be vested, it is in everybody's best interest to let you keep what you have so that you can become free. See, that is the problem with Black America. We've never had a fight. We've had a few disordered, spontaneous riots. But look, they name planes Well, not planes. They name places and trains after Native Americans. What are they named after us?
Streets.
Yeah, for 10 blocks worth of the street. It's a place nobody's heard of. A.W. Willis Bridge goes across,
Right.
one street to the other. Hey.
I hear you.
You hear what I'm saying? They
Yes,
don't even name the full street after you.
Mm-hmm.
They name it after some of us who've been long-term informants for the FBI, but...
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. That needs to be better known. But, it is what it is. It's the situation that we operate in. But, I was thinking about what you're saying about the LGBTQ and Black Lives Matter. Now, I remember when I went on their website that they were for everybody, I guess, except for black men. There was no mention of black males playing a role in the so-called Black Lives Matter movement, even though it was black males being killed by the police and power structure.
You noticed that?
Yes, sir. That's the same.
I'll tell you something else.
Mm-hmm.
There is a picture that I find something of an abomination that is out there. They put out, you've got police and riot gear on the left side of the picture. On the right side, you've got these large brothers who look very dangerous, in opposition. And in the middle, you got a fat black woman with a loud hailer trying to act like she's running the show. Now, I ran into that particular woman. She talks, has nothing to say. She screws stuff up so that the movement can't get the media coverage that would help it recruit. And the brothers who are in the Panthers are sitting there going, why doesn't she shut up? Million Man March that Louis Farrakhan put on 2 decades ago, they have the anniversary, and you hardly see any men who aren't gay in there. Mm-hmm. And it's sisters running the, commemoration of the 100 man march. And it was just a joke.
Yeah, okay. Even the most militant, I don't say militant, but more testosterone-driven black intellectuals were not invited to speak, like Dr. Umar Johnson, for example. He was not even invited to speak.
Oh, Dr. Johnson's got a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Got a lot of sense. But, that's like they treated Malcolm. They promoted Martin, but they didn't promote Malcolm. Malcolm and Martin got to be on pretty good terms acquaintance-wise. But see, they named the national holiday after Dr. King. But you have to understand, I was listening. And Martin Luther King was not a leader for the black youth back then.
Okay.
See, he was good for the preachers and the churchgoers and for white people. But we did not go for that down on your knees getting beat across your head by some racist until he felt guilty about it. We wanted to fight. And honestly, we took it like, oh, yeah, okay, fine, all right. But then you got Malcolm X. I heard him speak one time. Brother was dynamic. Yeah, right on.
Yeah, because you used to come to Los Angeles a lot, from what I see. You used to come to L.A. a lot. Yeah. West Coast.
Yeah, and then of Stokely Carmichael, he could relate. There's A.Trap Brown. Yeah. Hey. I met A.Trap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, too. Hey, dynamic young brothers.
Right.
See, that was our thing. That spoke to the black masculine youth. Fight back. They have revolutions all around the world then, and people were taking charge of their circumstances, getting independence, getting liberated. And and here's somebody trying to tell you to get out on your knees and passively submit to some fool beating you around the head until he felt guilty. Hell no. We had the principle of let's play kamikaze. We used to have a saying back then. It's like, here's my address. This is where I live. This is my apartment. Why are you giving it? Because I want somebody to give it to the Russians so if they launch an attack, they can use me for ground zero and get me and everybody else too.
Wow.
You know, it's a fire inside of you about, you know, this is wrong. We can't put up with this. I want to do something. Let me get something I can do. You know.
You know what? You say all that. I'm thinking even 50. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Judge.
I just said that's what young men are supposed to be about.
But it's like I got a lot of things that people don't even understand. Like 50 years ago, when you was talking, I was thinking about, you know, the LGBTQ black community. I'm thinking about James Baldwin and even Obey Rustin, and how really they didn't put their sexuality. I mean, you know, Rustin later on, whatever, but really it was about black people first. Not your sexuality first, but black people or your sexual preference. And even the black women like Fannie Lou Hamer, who didn't have like a lot of formal education, knew that the white feminists were up to no good. Like she knew it was about the black family. It's about the putting that black man. Her husband was a strong black man that supported her. But I'm saying, like, she knew that even they was up to some trickery, that she didn't trust the white liberal establishment nor the white feminists, and that she knew it was about black unity and solidarity. Even James Baldwin understood that, but now they're using James Baldwin now, which is interesting in a reverse type of way.
Yeah, they are. But let me give you an example of what the media does. And we were talking about athletes a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Who do we think of is not going to the back of the bus? Rosa Parks, right?
Right.
Several other sisters got arrested, but they had illegitimate children, and Rosa Parks didn't, so they pushed her as being the poster child.
Right.
But all right, now let's take that same era. Baseball, national icon, Jackie Robinson.
Right.
Why did we never hear about Jackie Robinson not only not moving to the back of the bus, pulling out his 45 auto, chambering around and saying somebody else is going to die tonight besides me, but damn it, I'm not going to the back of the damn bus.
Interesting.
Now, you see what the difference was? You took a nice young woman who decided she was tired and wasn't moving to the back, or you could have had this national sports icon saying, yo, ain't nobody going to push me back behind that door. Somebody's going to die tonight. And it won't just be me.
And he also didn't salute the national anthem either, though. He didn't stand for the national anthem either, even though he's a military guy.
Yeah, now, a little side story. I talked to Don Newcomb at some length about this. He was 17, and the Dodgers got him and Roy Campanolo,
wow,
who was the pitcher for the a catcher for the Dodgers for a long time, and Newcomb was the pitcher. And he's the only baseball player who's ever won every single award you can get for being a pitcher.
Mm.
But the brother's down, you know, we're talking, and he used to say, you know, Jackie had a horrible temper. So the Dodgers always made it a point of ensuring that you didn't get him wound up so he'd go off. Now, there is a guy named Chuck Connor.
Mm-hmm.
He's a tall, blonde-haired guy that played the rifleman in the 50s TV series. Now, Connor was also a Dodger, so Connor was Robinson's bodyguard. One time in one game, Newcomb was telling me this pitcher kept trying to hit Jackie with the ball, and he succeeded. Well, Jackie was about to take the bat and go warm this fool's head with it when Connors ran out of the bullpen, punched this pitcher in the jaw, and this flat knocked him out. He got thrown out of the game, but from there on, every time somebody messed with Jackie, Connor came out and jacked him up, this big, tall guy.
Mm-hmm.
But Jackie was always known as ready to fight at the drop of a hat for somebody that insulted him. So
Wow.
you see, we never heard about the righteous black man saying, hell no, I'll put my life on the line. So at the time he pulled the pistol in Texas, when he refused to move to the back of the bus, Jackie Robinson held the American 100-yard dash record and the 220 dash record. He was a 3-time All-American playing football. He had a college degree, graduated at the top of his class from UCLA, and was an Army officer.
Mm.
He had a lot to lose, and there was nobody else there to back him up. This is from the white witnesses as to what he said and did.
Wow.
Now, see, he's willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been one hell of an image to put out in front of black people in 1950s, 1960s, but you never heard about it.
Mm.
And the first person to write about it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the basketball player.
Mm.
So you see what they do to us to keep us from understanding what people have done?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like this, that Twitter stuff. I made a negative tweet about Kamala Harris. So somebody said, well, she's done a lot more than a TV judge. I said, you need to check my resume out. That is all I...
Exactly.
And see why Kamala Harris was being la-di-da little Miss Cutie Poo, and the judges all protected her too. I was the first brother to get elected to the criminal court bench around here. I was the first black prosecutor around here in the city's history. That isn't something she can claim. I also was the first brother to run the public defender's office, which she can't claim. You see, and I did it when back in the 60s we were there to open doors up for these schools that she took advantage of getting a good education through. You understand? So, yeah. See, they won't push that stuff. So, I always tell brothers, I said, this is your ambition. Say, develop the backbone so that you can take a stand when you need to, sometimes when you don't need to. Learn how to shoot a pistol, a shotgun, and a rifle. Get as much information in your head as you can. Get yourself a decent job where you're not answering the folk to the extent where they can control what you think and do. Get yourself a CCW, that's a permit to carry a concealed weapon. Organize and start getting known to your fellow people. And do something.
That's it. That's part of
man
training.
Determination that if you are in a position where if the police gun you down for no cause, you've got 15 seconds to operate, pull your stuff and shoot back. The bad man tries to take you out. Take him to Valhalla with you.
Wow.
Learn martial arts. You don't need to learn all the pretty boy forms, but learn how to kill with your bare hands. Learn how to choke somebody out. Learn the rudiments of how to fight with a knife, or at least take somebody out with one. Learn how you can use a baseball bat. Aluminum softball bats make outstanding weapons. Learn how to use your belt with an appropriate buckle as a weapon. Watch your six. Get in the habit of being observant. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Don't always try to stand out by being conspicuous due to something crazy with some clashing colors on you, looking like a circus clown. Pull your pants up. You look like somebody who is a homosexual in the making in a prison when you walk around with your pants hung below your butt. Plus, if somebody got after you, you couldn't run. You'd fall flat down with your butt up in the air.
Hmm.
Learn what urban camouflage is. And there's nothing wrong with getting your head together so you can do something with yourself. You see, people all have a circle around them. Some people's circle's real small. Some people's circle is real big. And that circle includes those people you feel and act obligated to take care of, deal with, and protect, to guide, give counsel to, and to dispense wisdom to after you've taken the time, effort, and the opportunity to develop wisdom and something to dispense. So you got me preaching it.
No, it just needs to be heard, though. This is clarity of wisdom and vision. Like you said, the millennials are looking for elders that they can respect. Like you said, so many went for Bernie Sanders last year. But the thing about it is, people blame millennials or young people for a lot of stuff, but they inherited the mess. Like, they didn't get a chance to do some of the things y'all were able to do 40 or 50, 60 years ago.
Well, I'll say this. A lot of this is our fault. One of the biggest things that's for the generic generation of the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
See, we were very well prepared and trained, unlike everybody else since us. We had to wear shine shoes. Girls had to wear bobby socks, skirts an inch below the knee, white blouses, no earrings, only studs if they had pierced ears, and a note from the parents, no jewelry, no nothing like that, no sandals. The guys had to have their shirts tucked in, have a belt on, and your pants were expected to be cleaned and pressed. So was your shirt, your hair combed, and, we had to take mandatory classes. You had to pass them or you didn't pass to the next grade. And we learned certain things. We had certain things and information at our disposal and certain knowledge. That let us become ideally suited to make choices. We put in place a thing where it's all about what you want to be rather than what you should or ought to be. And that was as a reaction to certain circumstances, and I think it was understandable. It was not without its merit in terms of the position. But what we did not realize is when you started taking kids that were not prepared to make those choices, who didn't have the body of information that we had all had drummed into our heads, well, when they made those choices, they made the easy ones, and what came out was not too good. We also had a thing that started in the late 60s as a reaction to Vietnam. Feminists and others started going around saying war was a man thing, so the way to stop war was to change the way boys were reared to be men. Men needed to learn to express themselves, to cry, to emote, to shout, to let it all hang out like girls. So you got unisex child toys, unisex child rearing, unisex child clothing. Boys couldn't play with cap guns or water pistols, but it was okay to play with dolls. So boys needed to cry, to shout, to emote, to let it all hang out instead of being so uptight and under so much self-control. A lot of white males who couldn't make it in the white male world supported that. The gays wanted that to be the case too, because they wanted to overthrow what they looked at was oppression that kept them from being what they wanted to be. And a lot of people weren't born that way. They just chose to want to be that way as an expression of the dynamic of I can choose what I want to choose to do.
But in any event, you started getting it in the media and the books and everything else, and it got pushed. The men should be emotional. They should cry. It's okay to be a coward and run. You should not be expected to stand up to a bully. The teachers, the parents, and the police should do that, even if we're only talking about 7 and 8 year olds. What comes out of it is not good. I'm sure feminists hate this when I say it.
Well, everybody got an opinion. But
yeah, but you know what the bottom line is?
What's that?
3:17 a.m. You're at home. There's breaking glass. Somebody's breaking in. If you are a man, do you look forward to the encounter and say, oh, man, wow, excitement, because you've prepared yourself? Are you a woman who's home alone and you said, oh, my God, what am I going to do? Are you a man and woman together and you're the guy saying, oh, I get to do my thing, and the woman says, thank God I've got this man here with me? That's breaking it down to its bare essentials.
That's right. That's heavy right there.
You see how it works?
Yes, sir. Yeah, a man is willing to die for his, regardless. A lot of people say you gotta be willing to live, but you gotta be willing to die for what you want to.
Yeah, you can't live if you're not ready to die, because you can't really live to the fullest extent if your death is so important to you that you hold yourself back too much.
That's deep right there. Wow. Well, also before I let you go, I got to ask you about this, because you've been a celebrity yourself. The situation with Usher Raymond, the singer, people are accusing him of giving them herpes now. Women are coming out. He had to pay $1 million settlement several years ago to a woman he allegedly gave herpes to. And now you got women come out the woodworks, kind of like a Cosby thing, accusing him of giving them herpes. One recently was a sister. People are, I guess, body shaming her because she's so big. But she allegedly said that she's suing Usher not because she got herpes. She tested negative for herpes, but because he did not tell her when they had their so-called alleged sexual encounter. Have you been keeping up with that at all, or are you aware of that case or the situation?
Yeah, I've seen that.
I got to get your thoughts on it.
He's kind of a big one, too. And when it first stumbled to my attention, somebody says, I refuse to accept that he slept with that.
But you've been in the Hollywood culture. You know people got fetishes and whatnot.
Let me tell you how bad it is. One time I was in a restaurant, and I stood up, and at a table nearby, somebody else stood up, and he stumbled, and he bumped the waiter, and the waiter bumped into this other somebody that was of low character.
Mm-hmm.
So when this person stood up and sued all of them, he wanted to try and sue me for causing him to get hurt.
Wow.
Not that he received any physical injury, but because he got a fright that he might be hurt. That's ridiculous.
Yes, sir.
That put an emphasis on the word punk. But you see, when you're a celebrity, you get admiration. And then you also attract the cranks and the creeps and the cretins. People want to live through you. Some people admire what you've done or what you stand for. Some people may admire your performances. Some people just want to live through you because they don't have a life.
Mm-hmm.
It should be an inspiration to somebody to get a life, but it's kind of pathetic when they want to live through you when they don't have one. Now, I made it a point, and I fought Hollywood for 15 years. Every day I take the show. They wanted me to push an agenda, that LGBT feminist agenda, and I just flatly refused. Every day I was in the studio, there was some kind of hassle, minor or major, about that. And I always tried to push duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, and they just did not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them, some did, but, 80-85% of them had another agenda. So you get people who stalk you. I've had that happen several times, and it's a bit crazy. You get people who want to be near you. You get people who want to claim a connection with you who never had one with you. All kinds of people become cousins, or they know your brother and you don't have a brother. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I had a stalker one time. LAPD knew about the woman. She had escaped from an asylum from the criminally insane. Her 3 children were in the custody of her sister by another daddy, or rather by another mama. Or was it daddy? I forget which. And in any event, they kept having to hide the sister with the 3 children, and she had already fired several shots at various people that she stalked. Well, she was a tall woman, so she would masquerade as a gay man. And what I learned is you can give no reaction to them, because if you yell at them, that's a reaction and that's a response. At least it's an acknowledgement that they exist. If you ignore them, they invent stuff. And I remember one evening, an LAPD detective spent the night in my suite because of this woman tracking us down. He had booked the room under an alias on my behalf. And he's there, and we hadn't been there 2 hours, and this woman gets put through to my room by the front desk. So I indicated he picked it up and he listened to it. So this woman called up about 38, 39 times over that night, and he wrote up a full report on it. So the next morning, this woman marches herself down to a police precinct and wants to say that I'd spent the night with her and I tried to assault her. Well, it got nowhere, because obviously I got the best witness in the world, an LAPD detective, who's assigned to shadow me for that evening precisely because of this stalking fool.
Mm-hmm.
But you see how that might have worked out otherwise?
Right.
That's been it's been about 15 years ago now.
Wow.
But I've had that happen. People will invent stuff involving you, and you've never seen them, never heard of them.
Wow.
And the problem is the dynamic that's so crazy. If you even deny it, they get more wound up. Well, he at least acknowledged I existed. So when I hear celebrities get approached or attacked or accused of that, I say, well, no telling. Maybe, maybe not. But being a long-term practitioner of the law, we've got this great principle that says innocent until proven guilty, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Now, Judge, also I would say to people, too, because people say, well, he did settle out of court, but just because you settle out of court doesn't mean you were actually guilty of anything.
No. I just got through going, I finally got a divorce after 3 years, 11 months.
I must have gone through $200,000-$300,000 in legal fees. At one point, I was having to pay her the ex's legal fees until the judge said that's enough. Up to this point, everybody's responsible for their own fees.
Wow.
That's just a divorce. But you see, legal fees start adding up very quickly. And at some point, it's like, okay, even if I win this, I'm going to pay more money out of my pocket in legal fees, investigative costs, and other things than I'll pay if I settled it.
Mm-hmm.
So the settlement technically says so-and-so does not acknowledge any wrong. This is for purposes of a settlement only, blah, 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 blah. But then the crazy media that just wants to make a point, they start going through this change of, okay, wow, whoopee, why did he settle if it wasn't true? They know good and damn well what the truth of the matter is, but it's not good for their ratings. And inferring that something is wrong is, in fact, the truth, is good for keeping you tuned in so you will watch the commercials that are put on by the sponsors who pay money to put these commercials on, so you'll want the product and go buy it.
Mm.
Sometimes the commercials are funny. Sometimes the commercials are better than the programming that they are backing up or sponsoring. Sometimes they're horrible. I won't go in a Quiznos sandwich place. One time I was skiing with some friends quite a while ago, and the person went off to go to a Quiznos to get sandwiches, and then they had this Quiznos commercial on.
Mm-hmm.
And what was on the commercial was the maggots that had been animated. Eye on this part here, over there, funny looking teeth, and they were supposed to be a rock band playing la da 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 da. And everybody said, I'll never eat one of those damn things again. So when the guy brought the stuff back, we just threw it away. And I never been into one of them again.
But they were pretty good sandwiches back in the day, but you said because they commercial. Yeah.
After that commercial, no way in hell.
Why the hell would they make commercial like that, though?
Some dumb fool thought it was hip. The ones I don't like what is it, Booking.com,
Mm-hmm.
they got this incompetent masquerading as a kindergarten teacher with the kids out of control throwing stuff. Two of them are in the fish tank. One of them's got her cell phone, and she's just getting away so that she can have some peace. They need to fire that woman. Grace, and it's embarrassing. That's not the way it ought to be, and the fact that they push it, I will never deal with Booking.com. Then they've got another one, Liberty Insurance, Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've got one dysfunctional-looking woman, one little dysfunctional nerd-looking boy with his hair too long, hugged up on her right hip, and a doty-looking little girl on the left, and she's talking about she couldn't take off to get an estimate because it was so much time having to spend with two kids, blah, 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 so she got the estimate by the phone. And then another one of those goes in, they've got a dowdy, overweight woman with three boys, or supposed to be three boys. Stop, where's your brother, They don't answer, they keep clowning, and that's supposed to be acceptable. They've got another one where she's got a high school age kid who has a driver's license, who's at least that old, we know, because the insurance company came out and changed a flat tire for him. And then we see him with one of his homies in another scene, and yes, the insurance company doesn't do that. Yeah, Dad, I know what a lug wrench is. What's a lug wrench? And you such a punk. You have a driver's license, and you don't have a clue as to how to change a flat tire. You don't know what a lug wrench is. You can't read the owner's manual. What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
but they push that as acceptable. Another one of theirs, I just love them. What is it? Oh, you paid your insurance every time, you paid on time, and then you have a little rear end bang, nobody's hurt, but I mean, what do you have insurance for if you don't use it? No, you don't rear end people. And then the one they do for Ford and Subaru, the driverless cars or whatever in the hell they are, the human attention span is 8 seconds long, and this dingbat fantasizing she's on The Voice. So what happens on The Voice? She's off in dreamland, and the car's got to stop for her because she's going to rear end somebody. A damn fool, incompetent like that does not need a driver's license.
I hear you, Judge.
Commercial to sell something based on stupidity like that.
Like you said, Judge, it's bread and circuses. That's the times we live in. Distractions and all types of other stuff.
That's just, that's like, what have we become?
Well, actually, just like in terms of being responsible, like getting back to the Usher situation, if you are having unprotected sex with somebody, especially a stranger, somebody you don't really know well, could anybody be held accountable for giving you anything if you're having unprotected sex?
It depends on the state and depends on whether it's known. It becomes damages from what amounts to an assault. Most of the time what happens is somebody's nice and pays for the medical treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time you get yourself checked out and you take precautions if you have that condition. But then there is this other thing too about herpes, for example. It's kind of strange. Most reports that I've read said about 98% of the sexually active adults in America have been exposed to it. 98%.
Wow.
Almost 100%. Reality seems to be that most people don't show it, can't pass it on, but some can.
No, that's interesting.
Kind of a weird situation.
Wow.
A whole lot of things, like one of the things I think are very ill-advised, and of course it's trending now, is parents who don't want their children immunized because they think it can bring on autism, all kinds of problems, or they may die.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can remember before they invented polio vaccinations, how people used to leave the cities and certain towns in the summer when polio epidemics broke out. FDR got polio and he could not walk after. Wilma Rudolph, the track star who was a friend of mine, told me about when she contracted polio. We used to see films of kids in iron lungs because they couldn't breathe because they'd contracted polio.
Mm-hmm.
So when they came out with the polio vaccine, everybody, his mama and daddy, lined up to get the inoculations because it was so horrible that it was acceptable odds for 1 or 2 out of every few 100,000 came down with it or had an adverse reaction. Nowadays, people just don't get it. And they have the whole bloody elementary, junior high, or high school when they don't get their kids vaccinated because something can happen to them. Hell, the chances of something happening to them are somewhat smaller than being struck by a bolt of lightning, but we can't hide in our closets because you may get struck by a bolt of lightning. Now, can we? What'd you say? That's a reality.
Mm.
People just have all kinds of screwball crank stuff that they start believing. And see, the problem with belief is that you can believe the world's flat. You can believe in a lot of things that are not reality, nor are they sound. It's better to have an opinion based on information, analysis, and experience that you can change or alter when you acquire better information, better analysis, or more experience. That's what's wrong with politics today. You hear it all the time. He believes, or it's his belief, or I believe.
Right.
I don't care what the devil you believe. What is your opinion? And convince me that your opinion is valid. Politics today has become like a secular religion. To deviate from the party line becomes heresy. Nobody can deviate. The Republicans and the Democrats are locked in a never-ending battle of nonsense, except on those things where their mutual financial backers can pull the strings and say, this is what you're going to support. This stuff about the Republicans got persuaded and not going along with, revoking Obamacare. Well, I've said before, Obama's administration didn't draft it. It was Republican Senate Majority Leader Dr. Bill Frist from the state of Tennessee who drafted it. He couldn't get it passed for years. His family founded Blue Cross Blue Shield and most of the HMOs. They're making a killing off of Obamacare. What most likely happened is behind closed doors, a lot of the Republicans got hip to what the reality was. Hey, a very important financial backer of yours supports Obamacare because he helped put it together. He did? Who? Oh, heck, what am I going to do now? So they don't repeal Obamacare, and we've got a built-in increase that's coming up in a few months. What they really need is a single-payer alternative to either group or individual medical insurance. Get it through a group like where you work. Get it individually if you want. Or if not, then let the federal government deal with it. The cost would drop. It'd probably be more efficient, less corruption in terms of padding the increase to profit. Because remember this, the difference between private enterprise and the government is private enterprise not only is concerned with the cost, they have to make a profit. The government does not. See the difference on that?
Yes, sir.
The difference, they came, by the way, Bernie Sanders is about the single payer thing. I've been for that for years personally. I'm glad somebody sees it my way. And the other thing, you get economies of scale. You get efficiencies that get brought in there that would help out. But we don't think. We get caught up in this bag. Oh, my God, that's creeping socialism.
Right.
Okay, what's wrong with socialism if it's reasonable? And by the way, what's the difference between free enterprise and socialism? In socialism, it goes to you directly. Free enterprise, it goes to the very rich and it trickles down if it gets as far as you are.
I mean, you look at reality of the situation, capitalism is failing the rest of the world. The majority of the world population is in poverty.
Yeah, it has its benefits. See, the theory behind capitalism is you harness human greed.
Okay.
That's what the theory is all about. You harness human greed and try to turn it into a constructive thing that benefits the many. But as in most principles like that, when it ceases to further its function, then you cease to apply it and go somewhere else.
Yes.
So when using human greed for harnessing it through free enterprise and capitalism for the collective good, when that becomes harmful, then you change and go to something else.
I mean, have they really has capitalism went through a certain amount of phases though? Have it been like reinvented several times over the, I guess, centuries or decades?
Well, it arose from the nascent slave trade that provided first large sums to reinvest. So you have a principal, you invest the principal and make money off of the principal. And then you reinvest that wisely.
But then, like, you look at America, though, I mean, it's like people say it's the wealthiest country in the history of the world, but it never really truly paid the folks nor their descendants, some of the wealth. I mean, you was able to get a free workforce, a free labor force to build one of the most powerful countries in history. But they never compensated, the people who built it nor their descendants. And you talked about your law school debt and how you told the collector, hey, this is the interest y'all really, really owe me. Y'all owe me this interest based on what y'all didn't do for my ancestors. So can a case be made? Can we get reparations for people of African descent whose ancestors were slave or enslaved?
Let me ask you this: do you think this House of Representatives we have now, this Senate we have now, would pass that?
No, I don't. But I think it can happen. Though. I think it will happen one day.
The last one it got brought up, it didn't pass it. One before that didn't. One before that didn't. It's been 154 years. Do you think which Congress and which Senate is going to pass that?
Like you said, we as African Americans never had that moment where we really had to fight. So I think the time is coming.
We don't have that many friends in the House of Representatives nor the U.S. Senate for that to pass.
Mm-hmm. You don't think the situation can ever change if African Americans, if Black Americans decide to organize and fight for what we want?
Now, what is that going to get us?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, until we do it. Like you said, we never had that moment where we actually really fought the fight.
Be nice, but under the present political landscape, under this particular governmental form, you can kiss that goodbye. It's not going to happen. And then who's going to get it, even if you come up with it? Who's eligible?
Just like the situation, there's an interesting thing you said that I'm thinking about the Native Americans, how so many white folks were able to claim Native American heritage in order to get land and casinos and whatnot. And I think with the white folks' population dwindling, people keep on thinking they're going to be the minority, but they could change the rules. They can still make themselves the majority. They say, this is the new white. This is the new white standard. Like they said, one drop of black blood makes you black. They say, well, if a white person marries a person of color, if your mom's white, if your dad's white, you're going to be white. You can be classified as white. They can always change the rules of the game, even when you're winning. They can change the rules. So I just think it would be the demand and the organized force behind those demands. I don't think we had a civil war.
Here's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have. How are you going to distribute that? Does Barack Obama get any?
No, he don't get based on he's not. His daddy's a king.
Does Michelle Obama get some?
I would say yes.
How about their children? Do they get some?
Yeah, that was because of the mom situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a nice pipe dream.
Mm-hmm.
But the realities are prohibitive. For example, every one of the former Confederate states had laws on the books for about 40-some years, up until the late 1920s, early 1930s, that permitted someone to come into court, circuit, superior court, chancery court, and petition to be declared Caucasian. And if to the judge or chancellor's satisfaction, they appeared to be Caucasian, or reasonably so, and they had no more than a certain percentage of known colored ancestry and a sufficient number of white character witnesses, they could get official decree of Caucasian status. Now, the way American law is once you made that decree, you couldn't undo it. So what they started doing was, in like, say, Tennessee, it said, anyone with no more than 1/8 known colored ancestry shall be entitled to a decree of Caucasian status if to the satisfaction of the presiding chancellor and 2 Caucasian character witnesses. This person appears to be Caucasian, said decree shall ensue. In other words, you're white from then on. Now, see, in the late 20s said anyone with any known colored ancestry, comma, not heretofore declared Caucasian, comma, shall be considered colored for purposes of this statute. By the mid-30s, the statutory language started reading, any person with any known colored ancestry shall be declared colored for purposes of this statute. There were some interesting consequences. When I first started being a prosecutor, first brother that had for the city of Memphis, and I had to do offers for some of these older brothers, I'd find on their rep sheets charges like colored person refusing to remove from sidewalk for passage of white person, reckless eyeballing by colored person. This is the funny one. Maybe they need to resurrect it. Acting too colored in public. I kid you not. So, you know, that had a big to do. But what happened, see, was this has got to do with money. After the Civil War, a whole lot of rich Southern aristocrats found that they had no legitimate sons to leave all of their properties to. The sons had been killed in the Civil War. You have to understand, in the Civil War, more people were killed in the Civil War than in all the rest of the wars America has been involved in combined. So they had nobody to leave it to, but they had a favorite slave mistress who was most likely an octoroon or a quadroon. So they had some boys that they kind of liked by these mistresses. So they had the laws changed so they could leave it to them, their property. And so these children who looked white did not suffer debilities. In Tennessee, it was 1/8. Down here in Mississippi, it was 1/4 colored. Arkansas, it was 1/4. In Louisiana, it was 1/16. You see, North Carolina, it was 1/4. South Carolina, 1/4. North Carolina, 1/8. And up until the late 1930s, the rule was, if in doubt, white folk usually treated the person as though they were white, because that could be a grievous insult. So it's what's white, what's black. So let's assume we've got reparations. Who gets it? Who actually had an ancestor over here that went through it? See where that goes?
Yes, sir.
And that's for being enslaved. What about what happens after it, like the apartheid we had with Jim Crow segregation and separate but unequal? You know, has South Africa passed any reparations bill for apartheid? You see, what we're talking about, again, is a poor substitute for having the balls to go take what is ours. or to enforce what is ours. What do you think of Irish now? Good white folk, good Catholic white folk. They run a lot in politics. They've had a president, John F. Kennedy. And, you know, I was in junior high school when Kennedy got elected. It was a big thing about him being an Irish Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, do you know until 1878, when there was a joint act of Congress and the Senate, Irish were regarded as non-white?
Mm.
And then us, you know, you take these Ancestry.coms, a lot of black Americans are shocked to discover they've got some immediate Asian ancestry, a.k.a. Chinese.
Right.
That's from all of these coolies they brought into the South, not just the West, to build railroads after the Civil War. You know, you're a male Chinese man, and, you know, a Chinese man, you're 6,000 miles away from the homeland. This is where you're staying now. You need nookie. You get you some colored nookie.
Mm-hmm. I do see a lot of Asian-looking black people, so I guess
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And see, you might find it strange. I would suggest if you get one of these DNA tests that you get several, because each of these entities that test is slanted in a different direction.
Okay. So you think they are trustworthy? In your opinion, these things are trustworthy?
Yeah, they're pretty trustworthy. Like, for example, Ancestry.com will hook you up with everybody that they've tested who is a genetic relative of yours.
Okay.
I found out I had 440 in the United States that they've tested that genetically proved to be related to me.
Mm-hmm.
Several of them I recognize.
Hmm. Okay.
You might be surprised at what's in your family tree. And if any white people are listening, they can do that too. You might find that you've got quite a bit in your wood pile that identifies as black. Look at the Jeffersonian descendants through Sally Hemings.
Right.
We know that the matriarch, Sally, was a slave. Now, granted, they've discovered archaeologically that she had her little bedroom right outside Thomas Jefferson's bedroom and a little doorway through the side of the house to come directly in. But you still had an African ancestor. But they look white as your next door neighbor who's white.
Wow.
So is that small enough to count? And typically, too, the average white American has a very high percentage of African genes. They're treated as white. Some of them are skinheads, neo-Nazis.
Right.
But, you know, they don't realize their African genes come in from old Britain. From several of the Roman legions were recruited from Africa, and they were assigned the occupation of Britain. So they, you know, they didn't stint when it came to sleeping with the local Celtic women. So you're a white boy, you're an Anglo-Saxon, you got black genetics from the African legionnaires who left in 412 AD. You've got another influx coming in later on when Spain in the 1490s became unified, and they gave the Moors there the choice of converting to Catholicism or leaving. A lot of them converted to Catholic, but they became mercenaries, and they went with the Spanish armies to the Netherlands. Then when the Netherlands got into it with the English, they came over and reinforced the Irish and Scots. So you got black genetics coming in that way that bred back into the English population. And then in the 1740s, Britain abolished slavery. They had 1.5 million African slaves in Britain. They didn't deport them. So they dumped a whole lot of black genetics into the Anglo-Saxon gene pool that constitutes the good old boys in America. And then people slipped in the woodpile. Now, we talked about Alex Haley and Roots. I got a little connection with him. One of my grandfathers practiced medicine with his grandfather up in Jackson, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. But he talked about his 10th generation ancestor, Kunta Kinte, and that dingbat slave wife that got half his foot cut off so he couldn't run anymore. Well, how many other ancestors did he leave out on his 10th generation? You've got 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512. You've got 1,024 ancestors on your 10th generation. Mm-hmm. That doesn't add them all up, but just on the 10th generation back, there were 1,024 people that were involved in the reverse pyramid that produced you. Now, maybe there was some inbreeding, but if there wasn't, you have 1,024 opportunities if you are a white person to have somebody colored slip in your wood pile.
Wow.
See where that's going?
Yes, sir.
Now, let's go back to Barack Obama. Through his mother, it turns out that he's got some interesting blood relatives. Warren Buffett, the richest man in America. Dick Cheney, the sleaziest vice president we've had since Spiro Agnew with Tricky Dick Nixon. And you've got Brad Pitt, the actor, and Barack Obama are all blood relatives. So that's through Obama's Kansas white mama. Mm. And you come forward and you've got his daughters. So now they're also related to Warren Buffett, Dick Cheney, Brad Pitt, et al., who all descend from a white indentured servant from France who was a Jacobite who fled religious oppression. Wow. So, you got some slipped in your woodpile. White indentured servant basically is going to have a choice of dealing with some black servants from Africa too. So that might have been a little bit of slippage in that woodpile. Mm-hmm. Wow. Can't tell. So basically, the black-white issue is cultural and appearance. And there's the one block rule. What do you look like 1 block away in daylight? And you're told as Asian, white, Native American, Hindu, black, or Asian. You see, everybody in America but black folk fits into that 1 block rule. You can't tell what they are from 1 block away. Mm-hmm. Even if the black folk are pale enough, 9 times out of 10, their hair or their features will identify them if you get close enough. Of course, Asian features, Italian, Jewish, Irish features, Anglo features, they identify too, but they're more similar to each other because of the color context than they are to being black. So we enabled America's melting pot. Mm-hmm.
Well, Judge, I want to thank you once again for a stellar conversation. I know a lot of people are going to enjoy this conversation, and they look forward to the day you return on the small screen. And I'm sure you got a lot of great things on the way. The best is yet to come. In the words of Great DeGilton, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing.
Now, let me say something. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are looking, and I don't have that blue check, but Judge Joe Brown at Judge Joe Brown TV is the real me. Mm-hmm. All right? So that is me. We follow each other, and you've got that link into We All Be TV.
Right.
So if anybody's listening to this one, the one that you get tweeting with my picture with the hat on, looking a lot younger, that is me.
Are you getting the blue check? Are you working on it, getting that blue check done? Or?
I don't have a website, and frankly, I need somebody to help me with that thing so I can get it. I've got so much else to do. That's one field of endeavor that I need to banish a whole lot of ignorance on so I can figure it out or get somebody to help me.
Oh, okay.
If you want to volunteer, brother, I'll be glad to take your.
I got you. I don't know the procedure, but I'll look it up and let you know if I could be of service. I'm more than willing to learn new stuff. And
all right, networking.
Yeah, but we'll put it out there. Anybody know how to do this.